I found my puppy's fur burnt and the smell of singed hair cut through the roasted turkey and spiced wine at the Christmas dinner table. Scratches ran across her little nose, fresh and angry red against her white fur. My half-sister Eden smirked at me from across the polished oak table and said, "Just a joke about a filthy animal." The sound of laughter spread around the Windsor room as if her cruelty was comedy. I slapped her without thinking. The sharp crack silenced the room for a single breath. I picked Luna up from her chair and walked away. Behind me, my dad's voice rang out harsh and dismissive. "Don't make a big deal." I kept moving my chest tight, my throat burning with rage and humiliation. 4 hours later, there would be 32 missed calls and 1 text from him. "Please let your sister live." I carried Luna against my chest and felt her heartbeat racing beneath her ribs. She was trembling. My hand ran over the patch of singed fur near her shoulder blade, and I swallowed hard. The Windsor room was buzzing with laughter again as if nothing had happened. The Marlowe Hotel was always booked solid for the holidays, the kind of place families fought to be seen in. It was glamorous with chandeliers overhead and waiters in black jackets moving, like shadows, but all I could smell was burnt hair. I pressed Luna close to me and stepped out into the corridor. The carpet muted my footsteps, but my mind screamed. This was not the first time Eden had mocked me or what I loved. It was only the first time she had touched something I could not let go. She had the sparkle, the confidence, the curated smile that made people believe she was golden. Marcus, my dad, worshipped her every success. Tonight she wore a dress that glittered under the lights. She leaned toward him, whispered jokes, and he threw his head back in laughter, proud to display her like a prize. I was the outsider, the adopted daughter he called a project more than once. Family only. He used to say real family only. His words never left me. I walked toward the hotel lobby, the warmth of the fire burning in the marble fireplace on one side and the cold from the glass doors on the other. I thought of all the Christmas dinners that had blurred together, the boasting of uncles about their sons in law firms, the applause for cousins in medical residencies, the admiring nods for every story that proved how successful they all were, and me pushing food around my plate, waiting for the moment when eyes turned toward me. "She works with computers," Dad would say with disdain. Some little project she calls a startup. The chuckles that followed stung worse than any insult. Tonight was supposed to be no different, until Luna cried out and I smelled her fur burning. I set Luna gently on a velvet chair in the lobby. She whined, nose pressing into my hand. I kissed her head and whispered, "You are safe with me." I checked the scratches again. They were thin but deep enough to leave marks. I remembered the way Eden's manicured hand brushed against Luna before dinner, the way she squeezed too tight, her nails flashing. She had hurt Luna deliberately and then smiled about it. The image played in my head again and again, each replay sharpening my anger. A hotel manager noticed me sitting there. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked softly. I looked up, blinked, and realized my eyes were wet. "No," I said. My puppy was hurt at the dinner table. The manager's expression changed from polite hospitality to concern. He knelt down beside Luna and frowned at the singed fur. "We have cameras in this Windsor room," he said. "We also keep incident reports for liability." I nodded slowly. "I want the report," I said. He promised to prepare it and asked if I needed veterinary help. I told him I would take care of it. I carried Luna outside into the chill Chicago air. Snowflakes drifted down under the yellow street lamps along East Ontario Street. I breathed the cold into my lungs and it steadied me. A cab pulled up and I climbed in. River North blurred past as we drove. I stroked Luna's ears, trying to calm her shaking. My hands shook too, but for another reason. Anger can be loud, but mine was silent, pressing deep in my chest. I thought of Marcus telling me not to make a big deal. I thought of Eden calling Luna a filthy animal. And I thought of every moment I had swallowed pain to keep peace. Not tonight. The veterinarian on North Clark Street looked tired but gentle. She took Luna into her arms, examined the burns and scratches. The fur was singed, but the skin was not badly damaged. The scratches, she explained, were consistent with fingernails. She gave Luna ointment and recorded everything in her notes. I asked for a copy of the medical report. She hesitated for a moment but then nodded, printing it for me. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my bag. Proof. On the ride home, Luna slept in my lap. My phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times. Marcus's name lit the screen. I let it ring. Another buzz, Diana this time. Then Eden. I turned the phone face down. They would not get my voice tonight. They had taken too much already. I had learned something important as I sat in that sterile veterinary office, watching Luna whimper. I did not need to scream or fight. I needed to document. Silence was not weakness. Silence was strategy. I reached my apartment in River North and carried Luna up the stairs. The place smelled faintly of coffee and old wood floors. I set her on her pillow bed by the radiator and wrapped her in a blanket. She sighed and closed her eyes. I poured myself a glass of water and stared at the city lights flickering beyond the window. The night was alive with honks and distant laughter, but inside it was just me and the hum of the radiator. I pulled my laptop onto the table and opened a new folder. I typed the title Evidence Christmas Dinner. Inside, I saved the vet report scan. I created subfolders: CCTV, photos, texts, emails. I did not know exactly where this would lead, but I knew I had started something I could not stop. When I closed the laptop, I leaned back and closed my eyes. The smell of burnt fur still lingered in my memory, sharp as smoke. The sound of Eden's laugh, the disbelief on Marcus's face when I slapped her, the waiter's pause as the room fell silent. These were images burned into me, not just into Luna's fur. My fists tightened at the thought. Then I breathed slowly. I would not let rage guide me. I would let the truth guide me. And truth leaves trails, reports, logs, calls, and messages. They had all begun that night. I woke hours later to Luna nudging my hand. The first streaks of dawn painted the sky pale blue over the Chicago skyline. I made coffee fed her and sat again with the laptop. Notifications crowded my phone screen. 12 missed calls from Marcus. 5 from Eden, 2 from Diana. I ignored them, opened the folder, and began typing notes about the incident in detail. Date, location, time, witnesses. I remembered the hotel manager's words about CCTV and wrote a reminder to call him when the office opened. My chest felt calmer than it had in years. That morning, as Luna dozed beside me, I whispered a vow. They had humiliated me for being the adopted daughter. They had mocked my work, my choices, my very presence. But this time they had laid hands on the only creature who never judged me. That would not stand. I traced the scratches on Luna's nose one last time and promised her she would never be called filthy again. The morning after Christmas dinner, I woke to the gray light slipping through the blinds and the sound of Luna's paws scratching softly at the blanket near my bed. Her body was still trembling when I touched her. I could feel the rough patch of fur along her side where the heat from the candle had scorched her. Her nose carried the thin red scratches like proof carved into her skin. My stomach turned as I poured water into her dish. Every detail of the night before returned with cruel clarity. Eden's smirk. My dad's harsh voice. The room's laughter closing in on me like walls. I poured coffee for myself, but my hand shook so badly that I had to set the mug down and lean on the counter until the tremor passed. I told myself I was not going to break. I had broken up too many times before, standing in the shadow of people who insisted I was not my real family. Last night had been the first time I refused to stay silent, the first time my hand spoke for me, but one slap would not be enough. They would turn that moment into proof of my instability if I let it stand, alone. I needed something stronger, something no one could twist. Evidence. At 9 that morning, I called the front desk of the Marlowe Hotel. My voice was steady, though my heart was racing. I asked for the manager who had spoken to me the night before. He remembered immediately. Miss Jackson said we filed the incident report. Would you like a copy for your records? I told him yes, and gave him my email. I also asked if there were cameras covering the Windsor room. He confirmed there were 2 in the corners near the ceiling. I asked if I could obtain footage. He hesitated and explained that requests usually had to be made formally, through legal or safety channels. I let him speak, then reminded him that a puppy had been injured on hotel property. His tone shifted and he said he would see what he could do. When I hung up, I looked at Luna, curled on her pillow bed, her eyes heavy but her body still alert. She was my only true companion in that glittering room last night. She had not asked for their cruelty yet, she had taken it. I took out my phone and called Cook County Animal Control. A woman's calm voice answered. I explained what had happened, that my dad's carelessness had burned Luna's fur, and that my sister had scratched her nose intentionally. I could hear the sound of typing as she logged every word. She asked for the vet's name, the time, the place. She gave me a case number. Hearing that number, official and permanent, made me breathe easier. It was the first brick in a wall I was building to stand between us. After hanging up, I gathered Luna's medical papers and slid them into a folder. The clinic on North Clark had signed and dated them. The scratches had been measured, the fur documented. The papers felt heavier than they were. Not just weight in my bag, but weight in my hands. I sat at my small wooden table and organized everything into the folder I had, created on my laptop. Evidence of Christmas dinner was filling piece by piece. Later that morning, while Luna dozed in a patch of sunlight near the radiator, my phone lit up again. Marcus, Eden, Diana. I ignored each one. Their voices could not touch me if I did not let them in. I wrote instead. I described the scent of burnt hair, the laughter, the way Eden's nails had dug into Luna. I wrote about my dad's voice telling me not to make a big deal. I described the silence that followed my slap and the way the room had frozen. Every detail written down was a reminder that I was not imagining any of it. By early afternoon, I decided to walk Luna for a short stretch along North State Street. The winter wind cut sharp against my cheeks, but the city was alive. People hurried past with shopping bags, couples leaned close under shared scarves, children pressed their faces to toy store windows. Life went on normal and oblivious while I carried proof of what had happened. A woman bent down to pet Luna and asked if she was all right. I smiled faintly and said she had a rough night. The woman gave me a sympathetic look, as if she knew there was a story behind the singed fur and the bandaged nose. Back home, I fed Luna and checked my email. The hotel manager had sent a copy of the incident report as promised. The language was formal but clear. Guest complaint. The puppy sustained burns and scratches, witnessed by staff. I printed it and added it to the folder. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Eden. The subject line was one word: jealous. The message inside dripped with her contempt. She said I was pathetic for overreacting. She wrote that Dad had laughed and everyone else had laughed and that nobody cared about my mutt. My chest tightened as I read her words. Then I saved the email as a PDF and dropped it into my folder. Another piece of evidence. By late afternoon, the weight of everything pressed on me. I thought of the years I had swallowed her insults, the way she called me fake family, the way Marcus looked at me with that half smile of disdain whenever he introduced me. She works with computers, he would say. Some little project she calls a startup. The applause that followed for everyone else's achievements, but never for mine. I had been invisible in that family for so long that I almost believed it myself. Almost. But last night changed something. I poured another cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the snowfall thicken. Luna stirred at my feet, resting her head on my ankle. I whispered to her that I would not let this go. Silence had always been used against me, but now silence would be my weapon. They wanted me to drop it to pretend nothing had happened. That was their way. Sweep cruelty under the rug, laugh it away. Bury it beneath champagne and music, not this time. This time there would be records, reports, and proof. In the evening, Maya Patel, a friend of mine who practiced law, called me back after I left her a message. I told her briefly what had happened. She listened quietly and then said something that lit another spark inside me. Camilla, she said, Eden's trust fund has a morals clause. If there is documented cruelty or illegal behavior, her disbursements can be paused until review. I sat in stunned silence for a moment. The idea of Eden's glittering lifestyle being interrupted, not by my hand but by her own actions and the rules of her own fund, filled me with a deep satisfaction. I thanked Maya and promised to keep her updated. That night, I put Luna to bed early and stared at the city lights from my window again. My phone lit up with more missed calls, more voicemails I refused to hear. I scrolled past them and instead checked the case number from Animal Control, again reading it like a prayer. I imagined the cameras in the Windsor room capturing every detail of Marcus, waving his glass too close to the flame, every detail of Eden's nails near Luna's nose. Soon I would have those clips. Soon there would be no denying it. I wrote more notes before bed. I wrote about Diana's words over the years, telling me to stay quiet for the sake of peace. I wrote about how Marcus had raised his glass in a toast once and said real, family only. I wrote about the way Eden had rolled her eyes at my startup, mocking my hours of coding as nothing compared to her sponsorships. I let the bitterness pour out of me into words. When I finally closed the laptop, my chest felt lighter. I slept with Luna curled against my legs. Her breathing steadied me. In the quiet hours of that night, I realized something important. Revenge was not about shouting in their faces or humiliating them in the moment. Revenge was about letting truth stand unshaken until it forced them to their knees. They would laugh, deny, dismiss, but the trail I was building was undeniable. They could not laugh away a vet report. They could not dismiss a case number. They could not erase CCTV footage. When I woke up the next morning, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls. 4 texts from Marcus, each one more desperate than the last. Camilla called me. Camilla, this has gone too far. Camilla, we need to talk. Camilla, please. I set the phone down. My silence was speaking louder than words ever could. I poured coffee, stroked Luna's head, and smiled faintly. They thought silence was my weakness. They had no idea it was my strength. By the second morning after Christmas dinner, the whispers had already started to slip through the polished walls of their world. I sat at my kitchen table with Luna on my lap, scrolling through my phone, when a friend texted me from the hotel. "People are talking," she wrote. "The staff said your sister hurt your dog at the table." I read it twice and felt a strange mix of anger and relief. It was no longer just my word against theirs. The story was seeping out on its own. I lifted Luna's chin gently, looked at her healing scratches, and whispered that the truth was already walking without me. The phone rang again. "Marcus." I let it ring until it cut off. Seconds later, another buzz, then another. "Diana, Eden." I ignored them all and poured myself another cup of coffee. The steam rose into the cold air of the apartment. I breathed it in slowly, steadying myself. They wanted me rattled, wanted me to jump when they called. Not this time. That afternoon, my email pinged. Eden. The subject line reads, "Pathetic." I opened it, half expecting the same venom as before. I was right. She wrote that I was jealous that Dad laughed along with everyone else, that nobody cared about my mutt. I read each word carefully, not with pain this time, but with precision. Every cruel sentence was evidence. I saved the email, printed it, and added it to the growing stack in my folder. Then I sat back and looked at the pile. Vet report, incident report, animal control case number. Now Eden's own words damning her. A timeline was forming, one they could never erase. I thought about Marcus then, about how he had always kept himself polished, untouchable. He was the trustee on animal welfare galas, the man who shook hands and signed checks while wearing a benevolent smile. He thought the rules bent for him, that jokes covered cruelty. But now his reputation was a thread fraying faster than he realized. My phone lit up with another text, this time from an old college friend who worked in PR. She wrote that rumors about Eden were already circling, and that Aurelia Atelier, the brand Eden was supposed to sign with, had quietly paused the deal. I sat there for a long moment, my heart steady, not racing anymore. Karma had started to work without me pushing. Later that evening, I called the hotel manager again. He confirmed he had pulled the CCTV footage, 2 angles from the Windsor room. He asked if I wanted to come by to review. I said yes, and half an hour later, I was sitting in a small back office of the Marlowe, with Luna curled at my feet. The footage rolled on a grainy screen. There was Marcus, glass in hand, laughing, waving too close to the candle. A flicker, then Luna jumping back. My stomach clenched as I saw her fur catch for that split second. Eden leaned down, her hand pressing against Luna's muzzle, nails glinting in the light. Her mouth moved and the audio picked up her voice. "Filthy animal." My throat tightened as I watched it, but my hands were steady when I asked for a copy. The manager handed me a USB. I slipped it into my pocket like a secret weapon. Walking home through the icy streets, I felt the city hum around me. Couples hurried past taxis, splashed through slush. Neon lights glowed against the snow. Inside me there was a different hum, quiet but powerful. I had what I needed. They could call me jealous, dramatic, overreacting. None of that mattered against video. The next morning, Eden tried again, this time through social media. She posted a story with her face perfectly made up, saying jealous people spread lies and my dog is fine. The comments started to fill, not with sympathy but with doubt. "Where's the proof?" one asked. Another wrote, "I heard there's a vet report." Eden deleted the story within an hour, but screenshots had already spread. I watched the chaos from my couch, sipping coffee, Luna's head resting on my thigh. My silence was louder than anything I could have posted. That night, Marcus finally sent a message that was not commanding or dismissive. It was desperate. "Camilla, please, we need to talk. Let your sister live." I stared at the words on the screen. The man who once told me I was not real family, now begging like I was his only chance. I did not reply. I let the phone buzz against the table until it went still. Eden grew more frantic. She sent another email, this one swinging between insults and pleas. She called me pathetic in one sentence and begged me to delete the footage in the next. I printed that one too. My folder grew heavier. Each document was a brick in a wall, and I could feel that wall rising between me and their world. They were trapped on the other side, pounding, while I sat here with Luna in peace. Marcus tried a different tactic. He sent Diana to call. She left a voicemail in her polished voice. "Camilla, don't ruin Christmas for everyone." I replayed it twice, each time hearing the subtle dismissal in her tone. It was never about what happened to Luna. It was about image, about keeping their glittering life intact. I saved the voicemail. Another piece of truth. As the days passed, the consequences sharpened. My PR friend texted again. The gala board was uneasy. Whispers about Marcus laughing while a puppy was burned were circulating, and if evidence surfaced, he would lose his trustee seat. Eden's sponsorship was as good as dead. The walls they had built around their image were crumbling, and they knew it. One evening, I took Luna for a walk along the Chicago River. The water moved slowly and dark under the street lamps. Snow crunched beneath my boots. I thought about how many nights I had walked this city feeling invisible, unseen by my own family. Now their world was cracking because of me, and I had not raised my voice once. Silence was no longer their tool to erase me. It was my tool to define myself. I returned home warmed, Luna's food, poured myself tea, and sat again with my laptop. I opened the folder Evidence Christmas Dinner. Inside were the subfolders CCTV Vet Animal Control Incident Report emails. I added the screenshots of Eden's deleted posts. I added Diana's voicemail. I backed it up twice. I stared at the neat rows of files, each one proof, each one undeniable. I felt a calm spread through me. I did not have to rush. Time was on my side. Their desperation would only grow. That night, just before sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. Marcus again. 32 missed calls total now. I let it ring and fade into silence. I turned off the lamp, lay down beside Luna, and whispered into the darkness. Let them beg. By the third night after Christmas dinner, I sat in my apartment with Luna, asleep at my feet and my phone buzzing endlessly on the table. The glow of the screen cut through the dark room. 32 missed calls stacked one after the other. I had stopped looking at the voicemails. I knew what they were. Pleading, bargaining, maybe even threatening. It was all the same. My silence had become the loudest thing in their world. When the first message came from Marcus that evening, it was short and uneven. Please let your sister live. I stared at the words for a long time. He had never asked me for anything in my life, not once. He had ordered dismissed, laughed. Now the man who told me not to make a big deal was begging me not to destroy the daughter he adored. I read the message again and again until I felt my hand tighten into a fist. He was not asking because he cared about me or Luna. He was asking because their world was slipping and I was the one holding the thread. The next morning he called again. When I refused to answer, he sent Diana instead. Her voice trembled on the voicemail, though she tried to sound composed. Camilla, we need to put this behind us. Your dad is under stress. Eden is not thinking clearly. You are hurting yourself by holding on. I replayed the message twice, hearing the polished attempt to guilt me. She never mentioned Luna, not once. To her, it was only about image and keeping the family spotless. I saved the voicemail and slipped my phone back into my bag. Later that day, I walked Luna along the lakefront. The wind whipped across the water and stung my face. I pulled my scarf tighter and let the cold clear my head. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket again. This time I pulled it out. Another message from Marcus. Camilla, please, I will meet you anywhere. I just want to talk. For a moment I considered ignoring it again, but then I thought of the USB in my desk drawer, the stack of printed evidence on my table, the file folders filled with their own words and voices. Maybe it was time to hear him out to see how desperate he had become. I texted him one word, tomorrow. We met the next day at a small restaurant near Michigan Avenue. I arrived early, Luna at home resting, and ordered tea. My hand stayed steady on the cup, though my stomach twisted. When Marcus walked in, he looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders hunched, his eyes tired. He sat across from me, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then he leaned forward, his voice low. Camilla, this has gotten out of hand. Your sister is suffering. You have made your point. Let us settle this quietly. I let his words hang in the air before I answered. She called Luna a filthy animal. She scratched her. You laughed when her fur caught fire, and you told me not to make a big deal. His face tightened. He shook his head. It was careless. A moment. Nothing more. Let us cover the vet bills. Let us fix this. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder. Inside was the vet report, the incident report, the printed email from Eden. I slid them across the table. He did not touch them. I looked him in the eye. Nothing will be fixed with money. Accountability is not a check. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass of water. Eden is unstable right now. She cannot handle this. She is saying foolish things online. You must know she does not mean them. I leaned forward, my voice steady. She meant every word. And so did you when you called it a joke. The silence stretched until he rubbed his temples. What do you want, Camila? Do you want her humiliated? Do you want her ruined? Tell me. I sat back in my chair and let the question linger. For the first time, my dad was not dictating terms. He was asking. I saw the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion in the lines of his face. I thought of the years he had looked at me with disdain, the way he had called me not real family. Now he sat across from me, powerless. Eden arrived then, uninvited, her heels striking the floor with sharp rhythm. She slid into the chair next to Marcus and glared at me. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged. You think you are so righteous, she hissed. You think people cared about your stupid mutt? Nobody does. You are jealous. Always jealous. I stayed quiet and reached into my bag again. This time I placed the USB on the table. I tapped it once with my finger. Here is your voice calling her a filthy animal. Here is Dad waving his glass and laughing when Luna was burned. Do you think nobody will care? I watched the color drain from her face. Marcus reached across and placed his hand over hers, trying to quiet her. His voice was hoarse. Camilla, please. We cannot undo what happened. Let us at least keep it private. I stood then, gathering the folder and slipping the USB back into my bag. I looked at both of them. Private is what you always wanted. Private so no one sees. Private so no one knows. Not anymore. I walked out into the sharp winter air. My breath fogged in front of me. My heart pounded, but not from fear, from certainty. I had seen them break in front of me, had seen the cracks spreading across the faces they showed the world. I knew this was only the beginning. That night, I sat by my window with Luna curled against my legs. I scrolled through my phone and read the flood of texts and voicemails piling up. Eden swinging between rage and desperation. Marcus begging, bargaining. Diana pleading for peace. I let them all sit unanswered. The city lights flickered across the glass and I felt a calm settle inside me. They were unraveling on their own. My only job was to stay quiet and hold on to the truth. Marcus asked me to meet him again the very next day, this time without Eden, promising it would just be the two of us. I agreed, but I had no intention of letting him dictate the conversation. I arrived at the restaurant, first ordered hot tea, and sat near the window where the gray winter light spilled across the table. I kept the folder of documents in my bag, the USB tucked safely in my coat pocket. My hands rested calmly on the table, though inside I could feel the sharp thrum of anticipation. He walked in 10 minutes late, looking older than I remembered. The lines around his mouth pulled tight, his shoulders heavy. He tried to smile, but it faltered. When he sat down, he leaned forward quickly, as if afraid I might leave before he spoke. Camilla, he began, we cannot go on like this. I know you are angry. I know you feel hurt. Let me make this right. I sipped my tea before answering. How exactly do you plan to make it right? He clasped his hands together. We will cover all expenses. The vet, the medications, even a trainer if you want one for the dog. We can settle this without dragging everyone through the mud. I let his words hang for a moment, then placed my cup down slowly. Money is not what I want. His jaw tightened. Then tell me, what do you want? Before I could answer, Eden appeared in the doorway, sunglasses over her eyes despite the dim light, her posture stiff with defiance. She slid into the seat beside him and tossed her purse on the table. I knew she would not stay away for long. She looked at me with narrowed eyes. This is pathetic, she said. You are dragging us all through hell because of a dog. I did not flinch. You heard her, Eden. And Dad laughed. That is not nothing. She laughed bitterly. Everyone laughed. Because it was nothing. You are making yourself look insane. I opened my bag and drew out the vet report, laying it on the table. Then the incident report from the hotel. Then the printed email she had sent calling Luna a mutt. I stacked them one by one until the table between us looked like a courtroom. Her smirk wavered, her eyes darting toward Marcus. He said nothing. You asked what I wanted, I said finally. I want accountability. Marcus let out a weary sigh. What does that mean to you? I leaned back, meeting his eyes. It means this will not disappear behind a check. It means acknowledgement. Eden rolled her eyes and grabbed the reports, flipping through them before tossing them back on the table. This is ridiculous. Nobody cares. I reached into my coat and placed the USB gently between us. That is not true. The people you work with care. The brand you almost signed with cares. The gala board cares. They will all care once they hear your voices. Eden's face was drained of color. Marcus rubbed his forehead, whispering under his breath. I watched them both squirm, and then I leaned forward. I am not here to destroy you. I am here to make you face what you did. You decide how public that becomes. Marcus asked again, softer this time. Then what do you want? I smiled faintly. Consider this the beginning of negotiation. We sat in silence for several long moments. The clatter of dishes and low hum of conversation from other tables surrounded us, but at our table the air felt heavy. Finally Marcus spoke. An apology then. To you. Private. Eden will apologize and I will cover every cost. I shook my head. Being private is not enough. Eden snapped. You want me on my knees on social media begging for forgiveness. I did not answer right away. Instead, I looked down at my tea, watching the steam curl into the cold air, then lifted my eyes again. I want you to write an apology addressed to me and to Luna, and I want you to agree to animal control visiting your apartment. That is the first step. Her voice rose sharp with disbelief. Absolutely not. That is invasion. Marcus put his hand on hers to quiet her, but she yanked it away. You cannot let her do this, Dad. I spoke quietly. This is the easiest option I'm giving you. Eden glared at me, shaking with fury. She called me jealous, pathetic, desperate. Her voice carried enough that other diners turned to look. Marcus's face turned red with shame. I remained calm, folding the papers back into my bag, sliding the USB out of sight. I knew the louder she got, the weaker she looked. Finally, Marcus whispered to Eden, "Just do it." Her mouth fell open. "You are taking her side." He stared at his hands. "I am trying to stop this from getting worse." She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back, and stormed out of this restaurant. The silence left behind was almost soothing. Marcus sat slumped across from me, his voice low and tired. "She is out of control. I cannot manage her. But I need to know what will satisfy you, Camilla." "What is your final line?" I stood, gathering my bag. "You will know soon enough. For now, think about accountability." I left him sitting there and stepped back into the cold wind. My heart was pounding, but my mind was steady. Negotiation had begun. They were already cracking. Back at my apartment, I pulled the folder from my bag and spread the documents. Across the table, I added notes about the meeting, Eden's outburst, Marcus's silence. Luna curled up nearby, her eyes watching me with quiet trust. I stroked her head and whispered that we were closer now. That night, my phone buzzed with another flood of calls. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and replayed the CCTV footage, watching their faces frame by frame, Marcus laughing, Eden sneering. I studied them like evidence in a trial, memorizing every detail. When I closed the laptop, I felt something I had not felt in years. Power. The following morning, Marcus sent one more message. "Tell me your final conditions, please." I read the words and let them sit on the screen. For the first time in my life, he was asking, not commanding. I closed the phone, picked up Luna, and held her close. The city outside was waking up, car horns echoing, footsteps crunching in the snow. For me, it was the sound of leverage. By the time the new year crept in, I knew I had to lay everything out. The folder on my desk was thick now, filled with reports, emails, printed screenshots, and the USB with the CCTV footage. It was no longer enough to simply collect evidence. It was time to put my demands into words so clear they could not be twisted or softened. I brewed coffee in the quiet of my apartment, the winter sun pale through the blinds, and opened my laptop. I titled the document Accountability Terms and began to type. I wrote carefully, each line deliberate. First, a public apology video from both Marcus and Eden, no less than 90 seconds long, posted online and pinned for a full month. Second, all veterinary expenses covered and funds for training and care for Luna. Third, 200 hours of community service at Lakeview Paws Rescue, with signed verification. Fourth, 12 sessions of mandatory family therapy with a licensed counselor. Fifth, a donation of $25,000 to create the Marlowe Paws Fund to support abused pets. As I typed each point, I felt the balance shifting. These were not suggestions, they were conditions. Luna stirred at my feet, stretching and yawning. I reached down to scratch behind her ears and whispered that we were almost there. She looked up at me with trusting eyes, unaware of the storm outside our little apartment. That trust filled me with more resolve. The next day, Marcus called again, his voice hoarse, when I finally picked up. "Camilla, please, meet with us. Tell us directly what you want." I agreed, and named the same restaurant, the one where we had spoken before. When I arrived, they were already there. Marcus sat stiffly, Diana beside him, and Eden across with her arms crossed and her eyes red. I laid my folder on the table, opened it slowly, and pulled out the printed pages of my demands. I slid them toward Marcus. "These are the conditions. If you meet them, I will not release what I have." Eden snatched the papers before Marcus could reach them. Her voice rose. "This is insane. You want to humiliate us. You want me scrubbing kennels like some criminal." I stayed calm. "That is exactly what you will do. 200 hours, signed." Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. "Camilla, this is too much. A video service therapy. Do you understand what you are asking?" I looked him in the eye. "Yes. For the first time in my life, I understand exactly what I am asking." Diana leaned forward, her tone softer. "Camilla, honey, think about the family. Think about the damage this will cause." I shook my head. "I am thinking about my family. Family protects the vulnerable. The family does not laugh when cruelty happens at the dinner table." Eden slammed the papers down and stood. "I will never do this. Never." I reached into my bag and placed the USB on the table, tapping it once. "You already did. Every word, every laugh, every scratch. The world will see it if you refuse." Marcus's face was drained of color. He rubbed his temples and whispered, "Please, Camilla, don't." I gathered the papers back into my folder and stood. "You have 24 hours. After that, the board, the sponsors, and animal control will see everything." I walked out, the cold air stinging my cheeks as I stepped into the street. My breath came in clouds, but inside I was steady. They thought they could negotiate me down. They thought I would fold. They were wrong. Back at my apartment, I set the folder on the desk and added notes about the meeting. My phone buzzed nonstop that evening. Marcus begging, Eden raging. Diana pleaded. I ignored them all and sat with Luna, stroking her fur, watching her heal. Silence had become my shield. Late that night, an email arrived from Animal Control. They reminded me that the case would escalate if no resolution was reached. Within 48 hours, I smiled faintly as I read it. The clock was ticking loudly now, not for me, but for them. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat by the window, and looked out at the snow drifting under the streetlights. For years, I had been told I was not a real family, that my work and my voice did not matter. Now I held the evidence, the terms, and the power. They could call it revenge. I called it accountability. As I closed my laptop, I whispered to Luna, we are safe, but they are not. And this is only the beginning. Eden did not take 24 hours to show her hand. By the next morning, she was already lashing out in every direction, as if her anger could erase the truth I had laid before them. My phone buzzed with notifications from social media where she had posted a story of herself smiling into the camera, saying jealous people spread lies and my dog is perfectly fine. I sat on my couch with Luna curled against my hip and watched the comments pour in. At first, there were a few words of sympathy from her loyal followers, but within minutes, the tone shifted. Where is the proof, someone asked, another wrote. I heard there was a vet report. Someone else tagged a screenshot of her deleted email calling Luna a mutt. I could almost hear the panic in Eden's silence when she removed the post, but the screenshots had already spread. The damage was out there. I felt no need to add my own words. Her actions were weaving the noose around her neck without my help. I closed my phone and poured myself coffee, the steam fogging the cold window. Luna shifted, letting out a soft sigh, and I stroked her back gently. She was healing little by little, fur growing where it had singed, her scratches fading. Eden had wanted to hurt her, and through her hurt me, but she did not understand that Luna's recovery was proof of my strength. Every day my puppy grew stronger, and every day Eden's world cracked more loudly. By noon I received an alert from my friend in PR. Aurelia Atelier had officially paused Eden's sponsorship. The brand could not risk association with allegations of cruelty. My friend wrote that the board members had already seen screenshots of her posts and the emails she sent me. The clauses in her trust fund were not forgiving when it came to bad press. I stared at the message with quiet satisfaction. It was not me tearing her down, it was her own arrogance. That afternoon, Eden sent me another email, this one more erratic. In one sentence, she called me pathetic, jealous, desperate. In the next, she begged me to delete the footage, offering to apologize privately. I saved the email without replying. I printed it and slid it into the folder with the others. Another brick in the wall. The following evening, Marcus called, his voice tired and angry. Camilla, stop ignoring me. You are pushing your sister to the edge. She is unstable. She might do something she cannot take back. I listened silent on the other end, then hung up without speaking. I had heard his tone before, the way he tried to twist responsibility back onto me, as if my silence was more dangerous than her cruelty. But I was done carrying their blame. Later that night, Eden appeared at my building. I heard the pounding on my door, the sharp voice carrying down the hallway. You will regret this, she shouted. You are nothing without us. I did not open. Instead, I picked up my phone and filmed through the peephole, capturing her slurred words and the anger spilling from her. I saved the video and emailed a copy to Maya, my lawyer friend. She called me back minutes later, her voice calm. This is harassment, Camilla. You are right to keep records, do not engage. I sat in the quiet after Eden's footsteps finally faded, my heart thudding but steady. Luna whined and pressed close to my leg, sensing my unease. I whispered that we were safe, and that Eden's storm would pass into nothing more than evidence. The next day, the final blow landed. Eden's contract with Aurelia Atelier was canceled outright. The brand released a statement about aligning with kindness and refusing to support cruelty of any form. News outlets picked it up quickly. The headline read, Heiress loses sponsorship after Christmas dinner scandal. Her photo appeared beside the words. I sipped my tea and read every line slowly. Karma was not subtle when it struck. Marcus called again, his voice weary. Camilla, please, she has lost everything. This is enough, let it go. I looked at Luna sleeping peacefully on the couch, the sunlight warming her fur. I thought of Eden calling her a filthy animal. I thought of Marcus laughing while she cried in pain. No, I whispered to myself, this was not enough, not yet. That evening, I received a message from someone I did not know. It was a clip short but damning, taken from Eden's own live stream while she was drunk. Her face was red, her words slurred. It was not me, she shouted. It was Dad. He waved the glass and burned the dog. Not me. I played it 3 times, my chest rising with each repetition. She had finally said aloud what I had always known. Marcus was not innocent. He was not a bystander. He had been part of it. I saved the clip to my folder, my hands steady, my breath calm. Eden had tried to throw me into flames, but in her desperation she had turned the fire back on him. Late that night, I sat by the window with Luna in my lap, the city below glowing in its winter lights. I thought of Eden's rage, her posts, her threats, her live stream. I thought of Marcus's voice cracking with pleas. I thought of Diana's polished silence. And I thought of myself, once the invisible daughter, now holding the threads of their unraveling. I whispered to Luna they always thought my silence was weakness. They never understood silence can be the sharpest blade. Marcus asked me to meet him alone after Eden's drunken live stream spread through every corner of the internet. I could hear the fatigue in his voice over the phone, the rough edge of someone who had not slept, who had been cornered by whispers from friends, colleagues, and board members. I agreed to see him, not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted to look into his eyes when he realized he could not climb out of the hole he had dug. The meeting place was a quiet coffee shop off North Wells Street, far from the glossy hotel bars he preferred. When I walked in, he was already there, shoulders slumped, hands folded tightly on the table. His suit was pressed, but his tie sat crooked, as though even his appearance had started to slip. He looked up at me and tried to manage a smile, but his lips quivered. "Camilla," he said softly, "thank you for coming." I sat down without answering, set my bag on the chair beside me, and waited. He cleared his throat and leaned forward. "This has gone too far. Eden has ruined herself, but we cannot let this drag me down as well. You know I never meant for that to happen with the dog. It was careless. It was an accident." My voice was steady. "You laughed when it happened. You lifted your glass and called it a joke. That is not an accident." "That is cruelty." His eyes flickered, his jaw clenched. "I am willing to put everything on Eden." She was reckless. She scratched the dog. She lost control. "I will support you if you pursue her, but leave me out of this." I felt my stomach twist with cold fury. So that was his plan. Save himself by pushing his daughter deeper into the flames. It was the same selfishness that had defined him my whole life. I reached into my bag and laid a small recorder on the table. I pressed play. The sound of his laugh filled the space captured by the hotel's CCTV. Then his voice saying it is just a joke. I let the audio play until the last word echoed off the walls of the cafe. He paled, his hand tightening around his coffee cup. "Where did you get that?" "From the same cameras that saw Eden scratch Luna and call her a filthy animal," I said. "You were both there. You were both guilty. And now Eden has told the world it was you." His face flushed with anger. "She was drunk. She did not mean it. But she said it," I replied. "And the board at the gala heard it. Aurelia Atelier heard it. Everyone heard it." He sagged back in his chair, staring at the table. For the first time, I saw him look small. Diana called me later that evening, her voice more fragile than I had ever heard. "Please, Camilla, spare your dad. He is not well. This will destroy him." I listened quietly, then asked her one question. Did he spare Luna when her fur burned and she cried out in pain? She had no answer. By the following morning, the fallout began. The gala board released a statement that Marcus had voluntarily stepped down as trustee due to personal matters. I knew he had not stepped down voluntarily. He had been pushed. His friends no longer called. His colleagues distanced themselves. The man who once strutted through rooms with polished confidence was now whispered about as the dad who laughed when a puppy was hurt. Eden, in her desperation, continued to unravel. She posted a long rant blaming Marcus, then deleted it. But not before half the internet had captured it. Headlines sprouted like weeds. Christmas dinner scandal. Influencer calls dog filthy animal. Dad laughed at puppy in pain. The truth was no longer mine to hold. It was in the world now, and it would never be erased. I sat in my apartment with Luna, sleeping against my legs, scrolling through the coverage, and felt a strange calm. I had not screamed. I had not fought in the way they expected. I had only documented, saved, and waited. Now the truth had done what my voice alone never could. That evening, Marcus called again, his voice broken. "Camilla, this will destroy us all. Tell me what you want. I will do anything." I closed my eyes, listening to his desperation, and remembered the Christmas dinners of the past. Him raising his glass, declaring real family only, while I sat invisible at the edge of the table. I opened my eyes and whispered into the silence of my living room. "You are finally asking the right question." I did not answer his call. Instead, I opened my laptop and added the new audio file to my folder. I labeled it clearly, "Dad laughing." Then I backed it up 3 times. Later that night, as snow fell quietly against the window panes, I held Luna close and whispered to her, They thought Christmas dinner was the end of it. For me, it was only the beginning. Marcus's voice on the phone was not the voice of the man who had once towered over me at the head of a table. It was a voice frayed by exhaustion and fear. He asked to meet once more, this time with everyone present. His words stumbled as if even he no longer believed he had control. I agreed, not because I wanted to see them, but because I wanted the end to take shape. The day had come for them to choose between denial and surrender. We met at a law office on LaSalle Street. The walls smelled faintly of leather and old books, the kind of place where binding agreements were made and broken lives documented in writing. Maya came with me, her presence calm, her eyes sharp. Marcus arrived first, Diana trailing beside him, her posture stiff, her lips pale. Eden followed last, her sunglasses hiding nothing, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. She had been crying, though she tried to hide it. I sat across from them, laid my folder on the table, and pulled out the pages I had written days before. "These are the conditions," I said, my voice steady. "You meet them in full or everything goes public." Eden grabbed the papers and flipped through them, her voice rising as she read aloud. "A video apology, 200 hours of cleaning cages, a donation, family therapy." She looked at Marcus, almost laughing from disbelief. "This is humiliation. She wants to destroy us." I stayed silent. Marcus's hands shook as he picked up the papers. He read slowly, his lips moving with each word. When he finished, he looked up at me, his eyes hollow. "This will end us, Camila." "It already has," I replied. "This is the only way left to prove you still have some humanity." Diana broke her silence then. Her voice cracked as she tried to smile, trying to appeal to something in me. "Honey, think about how this looks. Think about the family name. You are young. You do not understand what it means to carry a reputation." I met her gaze. "I understand exactly. I have lived my life under the shadow of your reputation. Never good enough. Never real family. I understand perfectly." The room fell quiet. Maya leaned forward, her tone professional. "You can sign now and we can proceed, or we will begin the release process. I have everything prepared." Eden shot to her feet, slamming her hand on the table. "I will never do this. Never." Marcus's voice broke. "Sit down." She froze, staring at him as though she had never heard him speak that way before. He repeated it softer but firmer. "Sit down." And she did, shaking lips pressed together. Slowly, Marcus reached for the pen. His hand shook as he signed his name at the bottom of the page. Diana followed, her hand steady, but her eyes wet. Eden hesitated until Marcus placed the pen in her hand. She scrawled her name, tears streaking down her cheeks. I took the signed papers, slid them into my folder, and stood. "This is the beginning," I said, "not the end." Within a week, the apology video was filmed. Eden sat in front of the camera, her makeup muted, her voice breaking as she read the words written for her. "I hurt my sister's puppy. I called her names. I was cruel. I am sorry." Marcus appeared beside her, his once confident voice shaking. "I failed to protect. I laughed at pain. I called it a joke." It was not a joke. It was cruel. The video went live on every platform. It stayed pinned as I required, and the comments flooded in. Some mocked, some forgave, many condemned, but the truth was there, undeniable. The service began next. Eden in jeans and a plain sweatshirt cleaning kennels at Lakeview Paws Rescue. Cameras caught her scrubbing floors, feeding dogs, her face pale as photographers snapped pictures from the sidewalk. Marcus attended therapy, his face grim as he walked into the counselor's office, a man stripped of his armor. I visited the shelter one afternoon with Luna. The staff greeted me warmly and pointed to the new fund Marlowe Paws, already providing food and medicine for rescues. I watched Eden mop the floor, her back bent, her hands raw. She looked up once, saw me, and quickly looked away. I felt no gloating rise inside me, only clarity. Actions have consequences. At home that night, I sat by the window with Luna on my lap. The folder on my desk was thicker than ever, but it no longer felt heavy. The weight had shifted to them. I thought of the girl I had been, sitting invisible at the edge of holiday tables. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who understood silence, who understood the power of patience and evidence. Marcus texted me one evening after therapy. "Thank you for giving us a chance." I read the words, then deleted them. I did not need his thanks. His redemption was his own to chase, not mine to grant. The city outside was alive, the snow glowing under street lamps, people hurrying along with scarves wrapped tight. I sipped my tea and stroked Luna's fur, listening to her steady breathing. Justice had been served, but it was not about revenge anymore. It was about never again being silenced, never again being invisible. And as I turned off the light that night, my phone buzzing again with messages I did not open, I knew one truth above all others. They were living in the ruins of their choices. I was finally free. When the dust finally settled, I found myself sitting in my apartment one quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning Chicago rarely grants in the middle of winter. The streets outside were muffled by snow, the world hushed under a white blanket, and inside my home there was only the sound of Luna's steady breathing at my feet. Her fur had grown back soft and full, her scratches healed into faint lines that would fade with time. Watching her stretch and yawn, so peaceful now, felt like the truest proof that the storm we had walked through had not broken us. It had been weeks since the video apology went live, weeks since Eden scrubbed kennels at Lakeview Paws with photographers, capturing her every move, weeks since Marcus slumped into a therapist's office with his pride folded into silence. I had kept my distance from them, not because I was afraid of their presence, but because I had nothing left to say. My demands had been met, my terms signed, and for once in my life, my voice had not been drowned out. One afternoon, I visited the shelter again, carrying a donation receipt from the Marlowe Paws Fund. The staff greeted me warmly, thanking me for sparking something that had already started to change lives for the animals they cared for. I saw new crates stacked against the walls, bags of food labeled with the fund's name medicine lined up on shelves. Eden was there, mop in hand, her hair pulled back, face pale without her usual shimmer. She froze when she saw me but did not speak. For a moment I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of her laugh when she called Luna a filthy animal and pity disappeared. Later that evening, I walked along Michigan Avenue with Luna on her leash, the storefronts glowing with post-holiday sales families walking hand in hand. I thought about what family really meant. Not the blood ties that had been used against me like chains, but the kind of family that protected, uplifted, and healed. In the end, I had built that family for myself in friends who stood by me, in strangers who sent messages of support when the truth came out, in the staff at the shelter who thanked me for not staying silent, and most of all in the small, warm body trotting happily beside me on the icy sidewalk. At home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and looked at the city lights. My phone buzzed with another message from Marcus, this one softer than the others. He wrote that he hoped someday I would forgive them, that he wanted to see me again. I read the words, then set the phone face down. Forgiveness was not something I could give on demand, not something he could beg for like a signature on a contract. It would never come, not in the way he imagined. What I had given them was not forgiveness, but consequence. Diana had written too, her messages polished but tinged with desperation. She spoke of reputation, of legacy, of how hard Marcus was trying to rebuild. I did not answer her either. Their legacy was theirs to salvage or let rot. Mine was to move forward. In quieter moments, I thought about myself, about the girl I used to be at those Christmas dinners, the girl who sat 2 seats away trying to disappear, listening to laughter and applause for everyone else while waiting for the sting of humiliation. That girl was gone. She had been burned away the same night Luna's fur had been singed, replaced by someone who understood that silence was not weakness. That patience could be a weapon. That truth could be sharper than any slap across a cheek. Sometimes, I still smelled the faint trace of burnt fur when I closed my eyes, or heard Eden's voice echoing in my memory. But those ghosts no longer haunted me. They reminded me, instead of what I had survived, of the power I had claimed. Every scar tells a story, and this one told mine. One evening, I sat with Maya over dinner at a small restaurant near the river. She raised her glass and told me she was proud, not just for standing up for myself, but for standing up in a way that brought change beyond me. Look at that shelter, she said. Look at the fund. You made them do good in spite of themselves. I smiled and thanked her. She was right. Out of cruelty, I had forced something resembling compassion. When I walked home that night, the wind was sharp and biting. I looked up at the sky, scattered with faint stars. I felt taller than I ever had before, as if every step I took was steadier on the ground of my own making. In the weeks that followed, people online still talked about the Christmas dinner scandal. Some stories fade quickly, but this one has sunk deep. It became a kind of cautionary tale whispered in glossy dining rooms. Do not laugh at cruelty. Do not mock the voiceless. Do not think silence means safety, because silence can turn into an avalanche when held long enough. I tucked Luna into her bed one night, brushed her ears, and whispered that she would never again be mocked or hurt under my watch. She blinked up at me with sleepy eyes and drifted into dreams, safe at last. As I sit now by the same window, tea cooling in my hands, I know that Christmas dinner gave me more than scars. It gave me strength. It taught me that my voice, even when quiet, has weight. It taught me that revenge does not always roar. Sometimes it waits steady and patient until the guilty trap themselves. And now for anyone listening, I want to leave you with this. If you have ever been silenced by family or pushed aside by those who claim to love you, remember that your silence is not empty. It can hold power if you let truth fill it. What would you have done if it were your puppy, your trust, your dignity on the line? Would you forgive or would you demand accountability? Share your thoughts with me. Tell me what you believe justice looks like. If this story stayed with you, like and subscribe, and join me for more stories where karma finds its way home.